Welcome back to Open Window Politics. Today we're going to be doing a prediction for your control of the U.S. Senate in 2026. So these are the seats that are going to be up in 2026 in November. We'll be going through each one of them to give a rating on their likelihood of ending up in the Democratic or Republican Party's category with the likely lean and tilt characterizations. We'll start out with the likely seats. For the Democrats, there's really only one, that being the state of Minnesota. So that's going to be one more seat for the Democrats, bringing us to 44 to 45. So Democrats are facing an uphill battle to win control of the Senate. We'll be going through the likelihood of that occurring. Democrats have just the one likely seat in Minnesota. As far as Republicans go, there's going to be a couple of them. I'm going to start in Texas. Texas has got an interesting Democratic and Republican primary going on in the state, so it'll be definitely good to watch both of those, and that will have an impact on how far the state goes into the Republican Party's category. I do think there's some more electable Republicans than there are some that are more electable than others as far as the Republicans go. Ultimately, I think whoever the Republican is going to win, but that is going to be the state of Texas ending up in the likely category. And then we've got a few others. Interesting case here in Nebraska. Nebraska is generally a very conservative state and very consistently votes Republican. The district, if I remember correctly, it's the 2nd district, could be wrong, but that district went to Harris. Nebraska has an interesting system where their electoral college districts or congressional districts vote for a congressional district, and that resulted in one vote for Harris, but the whole state at large. This is also an interesting case. The independent that ran in 2024, Dan Osborne, against the Republican, ultimately ended up losing, but did significantly outperform Harris in the state. And I think Dan Osborne would have a good shot at narrowing things up. Ultimately, it would still end up in the Republican Party's column, but I do think he would bring it from a safe state to a likely state. So that's going to be Nebraska. And then we've got one or two other in the likely category. Start with Iowa. Iowa, nothing too crazy here. Reasonable that it would end up in the Republican Party's column. And then lastly, Florida. So that is going to be 49 seats for the Republicans, quite a few. We had 4 in the likely category to 44 for the Democrats. So Republicans would just need to win control of one more Senate seat in order to have control of the Senate, at least for the rest of Trump's term. And I'm going to start with, since I started with the Democrats at the beginning, I'll start with the Democrats in the lean category. Really, not mean to do that. Really, that's going to just be the state of New Hampshire. So that's going to be 45 to 49. And then there's going to be one or two in the lean Republican column. So we'll start out with the one that I think is most likely to end up in the lean Republican column, that being the state of Ohio. This is also an interesting case. Sherrod Brown, a former senator from Ohio who lost his election in 2024, is running again and for the other Senate seat in Ohio. And I think he was a great pick for Democrats. I think he would be one of the best performing Democrats they could put forward. But ultimately, Ohio is just becoming safer for the Republican Party's column. In days past, both Iowa and Ohio used to be swing states. They've since moved more to the right. So I think that Sherrod Brown would bring this from a likely to a lean rating. And then there's going to be one more, that being state of Alaska, one more state for the Republicans. So that crosses the 50 vote threshold, brings Republicans to 51. So even if, they're going to control the Senate and could afford to lose a vote, with Vance being the tie-breaking vote. And then we get to really the core swing states here that are they won't determine control of the Senate, but they will determine the margin by which Republicans control the Senate. So We'll start out in Georgia and end with Maine. Georgia, I feel pretty confident putting that into Jon Ossoff's column. This state has shown an open willingness to vote for Democrats. Georgia saw some good news for Democrats in the elections that occurred last year in 2025, showed good news for Democrats. So that is going to be the state of Georgia. And then we're going to go to the state of North Carolina. North Carolina, a bit of an interesting case here as well. Former Democratic governor is running for the Senate seat and has probably been picked as one of the best Democrats that they could have put forward. So normally North Carolina ends up in the Republican Party's column for most races, definitely on the presidential level. But I think in this case with Roy Cooper, if I remember correctly, being the Democratic nominee, he would outperform many other Democrats, and I think it is very likely it would be enough to win the state there in North Carolina for the Democrats. So that is going to be the first pickup seat for the Democrats from Republican to Democrat. And then we'll go to Michigan. Michigan, I've gone back and forth on Michigan, and for now I'm going to put it into the Democrats Party's column. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But for now, I'm going to keep it in the Democratic Party's column. And then we will end with Maine. Maine is an interesting case as well. This is Susan Collins' seat. She's been in the Senate for quite a while. She has fended off quite a few Democratic challengers that have put her in a spot where many expected her to lose. She is a Republican from a state that generally votes Democrat. Maine is, along with Nebraska, is another state that divides up their electoral college districts by popular vote for each one for a vote in the electoral college. And generally, one of the districts is Republican, the other is very Democrat. So that ultimately means the state at large tends to vote Democrat. Not by a huge margin, but generally Maine, I have it on the presidential level at least, in the lean category for the Democrats, and I think it's possible Susan Collins could defy the odds again and win as a Republican in a pretty blue state. But at the moment, just with the national environment favoring Democrats pretty consistently, as we've seen in recent elections, I think that would probably result in a victory for the Democrats in Maine. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.